Good evening. Here to talk about a project that we are intending to reconstruct this year in City of Fargo called BR-23-F1. And that project is on NP Avenue from 10th Street, extending east a couple blocks to 8th Street. Just a brief agenda of what we'll be discussing, provide a staff introduction, and then kind of dive into the details about the project. So talk about the location, the description of the work that we're doing, the timing and duration of the phases, going into that next item, phasing, details, and then costs and funding. And then we'll talk about special assessments and how that relates to the funding, and then have an opportunity for questions. So with us here tonight, Rick Larson, the project manager. He'll be certainly very involved in the construction of this project. We also have Dan Eberhardt. He's our special assessment coordinator. So if you have any questions specific to special assessments, he would be the person able to answer that. And then myself, I'm Tom Knockmoose. I'm the assistant city engineer. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the location of the project. So it is on NP Avenue from 10th Street going over to 8th Street and stopping just short on the west side of the 8th Street intersection. So what we are doing, full roadway reconstruction. And so what that includes is replacement of the water main and water services, the sanitary sewer main and services, storm sewer inlets and leads. Driveway approaches up to the sidewalk will be reconstructed. Throughout the entire corridor, sidewalk will be replaced. Pavement will be replaced with doweled concrete pavement. And then part of a downtown plan that was adopted by our city commission a number of years ago did propose continuing the corridor for bike facilities along this corridor. And so we will have bike lanes at sidewalk grade on this project. And then there is a little furnishing zone planting area that will be built as well. So this project is set to be bid on April 12th. Start date is not determined yet, but we would intend that it would probably be in May of this year. And then completion is going to be in late September, with plantings likely happening next spring. So in order to limit impact as much as we can, it is difficult on a project like this, but we will phase it in these three phases to limit impact as much as possible. So phase one is some work related to work within the 10th Street intersection, and that duration is set to be no more than 30 days. And then phase two is really the majority of the project that's on NP from 10th to 8th. And the contractor will have 100 days to perform work there. But we will provide, pedestrian access along the corridor during that time as well. And then phase three is just a little bit on that 7th Street area to try to minimize the duration of the parking that's there for that building. So like I mentioned, pedestrian access will be maintained to public entrances at all times. We will run temporary water services, which typically do run above grade, and that will be installed before we do any water main removals to be able to provide temporary services. Driveways in some instances may be widened if needed by an adjacent property. Of course, it does need to comply with the requirements that are spelled out in city ordinance. And we do have forms available if anyone's interested in that. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there will be some tree and perennials planted in that furnishing zone. And then bike lanes will be installed on both sides of NP at sidewalk grade. So the total cost of this project is estimated to be about $2,386,000. There are a number of different fees and contingencies that the city does factor into these costs. So the total cost with fees and contingencies is just over $3 million. In accordance with our infrastructure funding policy, and I'll talk about how these values get determined for special assessments, but just below $1 million, or about 33% of the total project cost, will be special assessed. And then about 67% of the project will be funded using prairie dog funds, which are state funds that we've received. So this is ultimately how special assessments are calculated. It's based on a front footage for most properties. So water and sanitary are capped at $63.67 front foot. Storm replacement is 50% special assessed, 50% city funded. Street amenities by policy are 100% special assessed. And then the street reconstruction. So it does depend on the zoning and land use, but you can see here the different front footages depending on that zoning and use. And with that, that's what we have for our presentation. We'll be available for questions. Thank you.